Before we get started, we just wanted to say thank you to Old Republic Surety for sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety, as well as NASBP's virtual seminars for the fourth year in a row. For more information on Old Republic Surety, visit www.orsurety.com. Now, on to our show.
You're listening to Let's Get Surety. Let me hear your bonding talk with Kat Shamapande.
Hey everyone, it's Kat Shamapande, and I just want to thank you for joining us for this episode of Let's Get Surety. Today we have our fourth installment in our series, Lean Into Leadership, Talking Surety with the 515. And on this episode, we'll be discussing the importance of networking to young leaders in the surety industry. To do that, I've got with me my co-host, Mark McCallum. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Kat. I'm looking forward to it. I think I've forgotten how to network, so I'm really looking forward to getting some tips.
Couple years of COVID will do that to anyone.
Yep.
And to discuss this topic, we've got two members of the 515 committee on with us as well. Mark Dugan, Vice President and Unit Manager at Lockton Companies. Hey, Mark, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And we also have Katie Kleinschmidt, Vice President of Surety and Mid-South Regional Surety Manager for USI Insurance Services. Hey, Katie, thanks for being on with us as well.
Hey there, happy to be here.
Well, before we dive into the topic of networking, Mark, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and about Lockton Companies?
Absolutely. So I've been in the surety business for about 13 years, so I'm just about to fall off of the 515 committee.
You're nearing the end.
I am nearing the end. I'm the vice chair of the 515 committee, and I'll be the incoming chair of the committee next year. I started with Lockton in Kansas City pretty much right out of school, and that was my first experience in surety. So it's been a great experience. I went and moved to Nashville about 6 years in, and spent a couple years with a competitor, and then came back to Lockton about five and a half years ago. So Lockton's the largest privately held and independent insurance brokerage in the world. I think we're the 8th largest overall brokerage in the world.
Cool. Katie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about USI Insurance Services?
Sure. So I have been in the surety industry around the same amount of time as Mark has. So I'm also nearing the end of my tenure on the 515, but looking forward to new stuff. I started out actually in personal lines at Travelers when I was 22. Went to Marsh from there, having not a clue what surety was. I think I may remember taking the licensing exam and seeing the one question they ask you about surety on there. And then, going into a job that I knew nothing about, had great leadership there, and they really fostered my career. And that was in Knoxville, Tennessee. And when I realized I needed more opportunity, I packed myself up, moved to Atlanta, and spent a few years on the underwriting side, realized that I like being a broker better, came back, worked at Lockton actually for a little while, and then took on this leadership role at USI. So that's kind of my history there.
And Katie, you're also a vice chair of membership, is that right?
That's right. Sorry, I forgot about that. I'm actually on too many committees. So I just
Never too many.
Overachiever.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to know. I'm nosy, and I need to know what's going on in all things surety. So, but I am vice chair on membership.
Well, we're glad to have you on so many committees. And I think it starts to illustrate the point we're talking about today, which is networking, which I think is a big part of that committee work. Is that right?
Yeah, I've met so many people just being on committees, and I've actually learned a lot, primarily over the last 2 years, because I really had the freedom to get involved with everything going virtual. I'm able to attend a lot more meetings and learning about what we're working on as an association, and really being able to champion some of the important stuff for us to continue on as an industry.
Absolutely, and I'll piggyback on that a little bit too. And in the surety world, especially when you get started out, you're in your little bubble, particularly, wherever you're located and where the underwriters you're working with are located. And getting involved with the NASBP is really able to foster new relationships outside of that little bubble and be introduced to people that normally you might not be introduced to. So that's been the biggest thing for me as part of the NASBP is just, getting that longer reach and meeting new people.
We talked a little bit about 515, but maybe for those who aren't familiar, maybe tell a little bit about the 515 and why networking in particular is a component of that. Katie, you want to give that a shot?
Sure. And then I think Mark should add too, because he's involved, I think maybe more than I am, because I've kind of stepped back now that I'm nearing the end. But 515 that was the catapult for me to actually get into all of these other committees. So it really opened the door and paved the way for me to learn about what we're doing in each committee. And then also connecting me with people that maybe share my same interests or are interested in hearing what I have to say and what maybe I can add. And so it's really the 515 primarily was the catalyst for me to grow in my career. So I think it's just been invaluable.
Oh, that's great. And Mark, you've assumed a leadership position with the 515. So maybe tell us about some of the goals that you have for that group.
Yeah, so to step back a little bit on the 515, and it's really a group that hasn't been around forever. It's a relatively younger group within the NASBP, but it's really focused on folks that are relatively new to the industry. And the 515 really stands for 5 to 15 years in the industry. So we've got a lot of younger group of producers, and then we connect a lot with younger underwriters across the country as well. And so it's been a great little group. It's really kind of a small group that I think is very tight knit. And to Katie's point, it fosters a lot of relationships and a lot of discussion around just what are the challenges you're seeing as a younger person in the industry. And I think that's incredibly valuable. It's been incredibly valuable for me, and just meeting people. And I've made lifelong friends that are technically competitors of mine, but we're best friends and we share information. And I just think that's what's so great about the surety industry in general, is how it's such a relationship business. As far as goals and for the 515, the last couple of years have been a bit of a challenge just to network and get together. And I think you guys as a leadership group within the NASBP has done a really great job of making sure we stay connected virtually. And it was a breath of fresh air to go to San Diego a couple months ago and get to see people face to face for the first time in almost 2 years. So really our goals as a group are really to continue fostering relationships and nurturing those, and really focus in on getting back to visit with other surety companies. One of the things we do is we do home office visits. And then I think what we want to focus on as a 515 group is making sure that we not only are getting the time to spend with the actual home office groups of those companies, but also have opportunities to meet with, quote unquote, rising stars within those groups.
I just want to piggyback on that, because the home office visits, that is one of the coolest things that we do as a group. And like Mark said, we're so close, just a small group of us, but it is so neat to be able to see, as a young professional, the other side of what we're doing. So, and you really dive deep into what they're doing on a daily basis when you go to these home office visits, whether they're in person or virtual. And it's such a cool and fun thing to get to experience.
So with those home office visits, maybe give us a little bit more of a description. Does that mean that company really provides their leadership to you during that home office visit? And what sorts of things do you do there? Mark?
So I'll take this.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Go ahead, Katie.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, yeah. I mean, so I wasn't able to attend the last in-person one, but the last virtual one we did, the surety leadership presented to us, and they actually made it really neat. It was like a cocktail and ice cream social. So it was really, they sent us all this really cool stuff. And then what they did is just kind of dive in between making a drink with ice cream, which was really cool. They would dive into what they do and their appetite and how they underwrite things and their service and what we can expect as brokers. And it, as I'm explaining it, I think it might sound like it's a sales pitch, but it really isn't. It's more educational than that, but it's so much fun, especially if you're drinking and eating ice cream.
Yeah, I think the first virtual one we did was with another surety company, and we had a wine tasting, a virtual wine tasting.
Yeah.
With a winery out of Napa. So that was really cool too. But it lends itself to being very casual, where we can, where we have a face-to-face with typically the chief underwriting officer, president, the heads of the surety companies. We have an audience with them, and not only them, but also they're top folks around the country, and also some of the rising stars across the country, which it's just they talk about, how they underwrite. We can ask questions about, how would you look at this? What is your appetite based on, these types of scenarios? What are your growth plans? A lot of those different things that if you're not in our group, it's few and far between would have that type of audience.
Wow. So it sounds like you really get a unique insight into that company and that market.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's terrific. And is this something that you then plan to do on a regular basis, more or less annually?
Yeah, I think ideally we would do 1 to 2 of these visits every year. And it just kind of depends on schedules. It's obviously really hard to schedule a trip for 30 plus people. And weather has actually had a little bit of caught us in a snag in years past, where we were flying somewhere up in the Northeast and there was a big nor'easter and we ended up having to cancel our trip. But yeah, it's something we typically do at least once or twice a year. And we're, rotating those sureties and trying to find sureties that maybe we haven't had an audience with as of late, not only in a home office visit or maybe with some of our other events as well. We're trying to make sure that we're spreading the love a little bit, right. And making sure that we, it's not, we're not focused on 5 or 6 sureties. We're getting engaged with, 20 plus sureties throughout the year.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah.
And so they represent all different kinds of markets. You're deliberately seeking a diversity of surety companies to meet with. Wow.
Right. Exactly. I mean, we're very methodical about making sure that we're engaging with some of the smaller regionals as well as, the big 4 or 5.
Well, that sounds like a terrific experience, but my understanding is that there are also other networking opportunities that 515 engages in. For example, opportunities at the annual meeting. Katie, would you like to kind of describe, at least in the past, some of those opportunities that you've engaged in?
Yeah, we've done, similar to what we do with the home office. I know that they host a mixer for 515 so we can network with each other. And I believe we were trying to do, but COVID ruined it. The last time we were doing the hostage negotiation with an FBI expert. I think that was something and I think we're still going to try to do that, which I am so excited. And I don't know if it's hostage or how to read someone like a hostage negotiator. I can't remember the exact lingo.
No, you nailed it. It's how to read someone like a hostage negotiator. Yeah,
right.
With a former FBI agent. Yeah.
Right. So that, as we grow in our careers and we become the leaders of surety, because that's really what we're focused on doing. I don't think any of us that are on the 515 have any desire to be stagnant. I think we're all just looking for the next growth opportunity. And as we get into more leadership roles, that's going to be really important to be able to read people like hostage negotiators. And sometimes we may feel like we are, hostage negotiators at times in our career. So the opportunities for stuff like that 515 has presented to us has just been great. And I'm really excited to see what other things we come up with.
And Mark,
Maybe they'll teach us how to read someone over a video call.
Voice inflection, right? So,
Yeah.
And Mark, I know you had some ideas for extending that networking with rising stars on the underwriter side at Annual as well.
Right. So one thing we do is, we also do the Monday night VIP pre-receptions that are 5:15 only, and gives us another audience with senior folks within different surety companies, and we also rotate those on an annual basis. But yeah, one thing we've been throwing around a little bit too is not, whether it's at the home office visits or the fall meetings and or the national meeting and annual meeting, is engaging with some of our rising stars across the country that we have built relationship with, that the sureties have identified as quote unquote rising stars within their organization, and ensuring that inviting them to our events, and hopefully having an audience with them as well to get them engaged within our group, because it's really important to not only have producers across the country engaged within the NASBP, but also our carrier partners, and as those guys grow and climb the corporate ladder within their own organizations, I think it's key for us as young folks to make sure that we're building relationships with them, because ultimately they're going to be the decision makers.
Yeah, I mean, it makes so much sense that type of peer-to-peer networking would be really important. Do you, either of you, I'd like to ask actually both of you, Katie and Mark, if you could share an example of a experience from your career where, a relationship you've built with someone on the underwriter side has really impacted how you were able to do your job and impacted how you do your business.
Sure. I mean, it happens all the time, to be honest. Over the years, I lean on my underwriting partners all the time. I am, bouncing ideas off them. Hey, can you take a look at this and let me know, here's what I'm thinking about this account. What are your thoughts? I have a very collaborative approach with my underwriters, because I feel like they are always able to teach me something I don't already know. And I know nothing as far as I'm concerned with surety. It's just this open-ended amount of knowledge that can be had. You can never know it all. And so I like to learn from them. It makes me a better broker. And I leverage that relationships, with these people. And like Mark said earlier, these become our friends. These become like family. We work with them so closely. And I call some of my underwriters, we have like a weekly unofficial phone call in the afternoons when I'm driving FedEx to, drop off some bonds. Give them a quick shout just to see what they're seeing, what they're working on. And those relationships have made me be able to sell and get a BOR on a client, because I was able to have a thoughtful conversation because I bounced some ideas off of an underwriter. So the value of that relationship is not lost on me as a broker.
Yeah, and I'll expand on that too, in that, a lot of times our, the client is ultimately number one, but at the same time, we also have to be very cognizant of our carrier partners and the relationships we've built over the years. And, there's obviously situations where we may have a really challenging deal. And, one thing that, my mentors always said is we don't write bad bonds. And I think that is really key to establishing relationships with those folks, even at a younger age in your career. So as you grow, there's a significant level of trust that's there, that when you do send them, something that you feel very strongly about, they trust you. This is a relationship business. And I think that's key. A story though, as far as just the value of growing within this group and the 515 group and networking. And it's, early on in my career, I attended several carrier, training sessions, as well as some regional NASBP meetings. And a few of those guys, we were either competitors or they were underwriter and I was a broker. We engaged at a very early point in our career, located in different cities, and sure enough, now a couple of them now I work with directly, and then at Lockton, and then a couple others are key underwriters for me. And so just having those, those old stories of, having fun at some of those carrier trainings and not knowing anything as far as sureties, we could maybe spell bond at the point, but we couldn't spell surety. And still having those relationships 10, 15 years into the business and even working together on stuff has been really awesome.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like, networking obviously is important in all aspects of business, particularly important for producers. And then 515 really provides these unique opportunities. If I'm a young producer and I want to get engaged in the 515, Mark, what do I need to do in that regard?
So, I mean, really, it's just you have to be a member of the NASBP. Your agency does, and then really, it's a matter of having your superior, your boss, refer you to our program. You can go online to our committee, and I believe there's a membership form on there that you can print out and have them fill out. And really, it's simple as that as far as getting engaged with our group. And at that point, our committee will then approve your your application, more or less. I don't think we've denied anybody. And you come on as a and I'm blanking on what the word is, but you're kind of in a candidate phase. Thank you, Katie. And so you have, I believe it's a 2-year period of being a candidate. And what's great about the 515 group is part of our requirements is that you have to join another committee. Katie's on like 13 committees, I think, right, Katie?
I'm just on everything.
So she's taken it a little bit above and beyond, but they require you to get engaged in another committee, which I think is so valuable in just meeting other people within the surety industry, getting engaged with folks like Mark and Catherine and others within the NASBP executive team, and just having a broader view of our organization. So you have to basically make sure you're attending 515 events throughout the year. I think we have at least 4, we have 4 quarterly calls, as well as going to at least one of our meetings, whether it's a fall meeting or an annual meeting or a fly-in event or home office visit. You've got to go to at least one event. You do that for 2 years, then you kind of get on as a full member. And so at that point, you're on as a full-on committee member, and
that's great.
And you're off and running.
The requirement to join another committee, it's really helping to steer people in a direction, because I think it's very easy to get lost in how it all pieces itself together and how this is helpful if you're not taking it to that next level and joining a committee. The other thing too that we do is you're assigned kind of a mentor that can help talk you through your next step, like, guide you to a certain committee if you have certain interests that you want to look into, and help you navigate the joining of a committee and what that looks like for, a young emerging producer. And the other thing, it's a little time commitment here when we're talking about, you need to go to the meetings, and you need to go to, at least, I think it might be 2 in-person events. Can't remember at this point. It's been like 4 or 5 years for me. So,
Right.
But that time commitment pays off. It's an investment in yourself. It's an investment in your career, and it's an investment for your company as well, because what you're getting out of that is so much more than the few hours that you're committing to, a meeting once a month and, traveling a couple times a year.
Right. And we don't, and I think the reason behind that is we want engaged membership. And I think we want engaged membership within our committee, but we also want engaged membership on other committees as well as within NASBP as a whole. We don't necessarily want people coming on our committee that don't do anything. And I think that's because you're not going to get any value out of that. And so encouraging our folks to join other committees and get engaged with meetings throughout the year. And by doing that, it provides continuity for NASBP as a whole. I mean, that's really the ultimate reason why we have the 515. And I think it's been a great avenue to do that and to make, networking a huge part of our business, much more accessible.
Okay, so I'm a young producer. I've heard this podcast. I'm very excited. And I also have heard that there's a time commitment here. So what advice would you give that producer and how to sell internally to get the ability to become a candidate and really get involved? Do you have some tips on how you went about it within your own agencies?
Yeah. I went to my boss at the time, and just told him, look, at the time there was an emerging unit at the company I was with. It is the company that Mark is with now. But we were, kind of starting out. So I said, look, this is a great way for us to network, to get at the national level of some of these markets. It's also a great way for me to bring back knowledge that we may not otherwise have access to. And at the time, it was just the two of us on that team. His team has since grown significantly and they're killing it. But, at the time, it was just the two of us. And I said, we may not have access to certain things that, this may help give us an avenue to get in there where otherwise we wouldn't. And so, like I said, you're investing a little bit of time and some money for me to travel to go to these events, or for me to take some time to go to these virtual meetings, but we're getting that back tenfold with the knowledge I'm bringing back. And just a good example of that is me attending the board meeting a couple weeks ago. I have pages of stuff that I was able to present to my company, my peers throughout the country. This is what we're working on as an organization or as an industry. This is the type of stuff that's really going to bring us to the next level and bring us into the, next century, because as everybody knows, Surety is historically behind the eight ball when it comes to technology. So to be able to bring all that back and have tangible stuff to show my peers is so valuable for us as a broker. So that's how I did it.
Oh, that's terrific. How about you, Mark?
I would say, hopefully your organization and your superiors are already actively engaged with NASBP and it's more of a no-brainer for them. But if not, I think Katie, I think Katie hit the nail on the head. I just think indicating the value of networking within not only, your own region, but nationally, and getting the access to people that you wouldn't necessarily have access to, I think is incredibly valued, not only to yourself as a producer, but also to your organization, and helping your organization be more visible. There's a lot of, privately held agencies that are members of NASBP, and being able to get their name out there and more on the map outside of their own bubble, I think is incredibly valuable.
Well, for anyone listening that, Katie, Mark, I'm sure that you've convinced a large number of our audience that if they're between 5 to 15 years in the surety industry, they should go ahead and go through that nominating process and be on the 515. We'll include a link there to the nominating form so that you can go ahead and do that if you're interested. And then also, Katie and Mark mentioned all of the opportunities that'll be coming up at this year's annual meeting. We'll include a link there too. If you're not registered yet, go ahead and get registered. And I know all of us, Mark McCallum, Mark Dugan, Katie Kleinschmidt, all of us will be excited to see you there in person.
Sure. I'm pumped to see people in person.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you guys so much. Yeah. Thanks so much for being online with us for this episode and just sharing a little bit about networking. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to you guys again soon.
You've been listening to Let's Get Surety, brought to you by the National Association of Surety Bond Producers. For more information about the NASBP and its members, visit nasbp.org.
Before we go, we just wanted to say thank you again to Old Republic Surety for their generous support in sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety. For more information on Old Republic Surety, visit www.orsurety.com.